Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. That was funny. We never prep, Anthony and I, and for the first time ever, I said, "What should we start with?" And I'm like, "How about I start with this?" He's like, "Yeah, okay." Like, absolutely had no care in the world. We are at the LaPanta household. You almost burned it down. Smoke everywhere.
We didn't really burn it down. We did smoke. There was a fair amount of smoke during dinner prep.
Yes. You have
no flame, though.
No flame, but your vent doesn't work, and clearly you have no working smoke detectors. I mean, that is a guarantee.
Well, they just have a high threshold of pain.
Yeah, they do. Oh, my God. It smelled like Alberta in the middle of the summer. All right.
But dinner was good.
Dinner was incredible. So thanks, as always. Our next live show is October 30th at SplitRock. October 30th at SplitRock. We might have a guest up there. So definitely check that out. We'll be giving away, we'll have a couple giveaways, and then you can also register for the Brock Faber autographed jersey as well. Every time you come to a live show until about December or January, you could sign up. So if you come to many shows, you'll get many different opportunities to win that jersey. Anthony and I are going to have some fun during the show. We're going to do a couple contests. We're going to pick point totals for some Wild players. Give our top three in each division, and that'll be a season-long contest that we will know who won at the end, and we'll have some other bold predictions as well. But Anthony, I felt guilty last week. I felt bad for yelling at you on the podcast. As usual, I was right in that argument. And then as I'm feeling guilty, I get this text from your wife that you were in a car accident leaving the podcast. And I'm like, oh, boy. Then I felt horrible.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate ride home. Luckily it was not a major accident. Nobody was injured. It was unfortunate, and it's a pain in the butt, and I absolutely hate going through all of this process and on the phone with insurance companies that night and now having to go to repair shops and figure all that out. But could be a lot worse. Nobody was injured. She had little kids in her car. They were fine.
The story that you told, that I heard when you explained what happened to me in a text message, sounded awfully like what happened to us in Beverly Hills.
Not even close, because you smashed into somebody in Beverly Hills.
She smashed into me.
In this case, I was just minding my own business, driving down the right lane, and a woman who was stuck in stop traffic in the left lane decided she wanted to cut out of that lane of traffic and just change lanes into me as I was driving by.
And that's exactly what happened.
We were in a turn lane, weren't we?
We were in a turn lane. We were going to make a left on that side road where I basically had to pull
over. And then
you
hit somebody.
And then she, look, think of it as logically, all right? We are going, I could tell you right now that we were going northbound.
I know which way we were going.
We were going northbound. We were making a left. And she was in the entire passenger side of our car got hit. So clearly, she came into me. What happened is I was in the turn lane making a left. We were in traffic. She decided that she suddenly wanted to make a left to cut past this traffic and slammed into us. That is what happened.
All I remember is that because you got in a car accident and hit this woman, Margot couldn't get out of the car.
I know. And then
Stev and I had to go to the grocery store to get
prosciutto
rations. Well, we got wine too, but that
was like the first trip that I met your wife. We've told this story 1,000 times.
Yep.
But I remember the one thing is that I was like, could not believe that you and Chad and your brother decided to go get prosciutto. And I thought it was so nice that she stayed with me. And then as we're waiting for the police officer, she leveled with me that she just couldn't get out of the car, that she was trapped.
Because the door wouldn't open. Yeah, that's right. And we actually went to, because we had to wait for, was it the police or just to get in touch with insurance companies or something?
We had to get the fake police, Beverly Hills
that's
cop.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah, Beverly Hills cop.
Yeah,
that's right.
It was pretty cool. And then we went to, that was the thing that pissed me off the most.
Well, but when we were waiting, we just decided, because they said it was going to take like an hour.
Yeah.
So we decided, well, let's walk down here. We'll see if we can find a liquor store or something. We'll get a bottle of wine. We'll just kind of hang out on the side of the hill here and have a happy hour, because we were on our way to happy hour. And I'll never forget, I walked into this grocery store and we bought a bottle of wine. We bought some prosciutto and some cheese and walked up to the counter, and I asked the guy if he had a corkscrew that we could borrow. And he said, why do you need to borrow a corkscrew? I said, well, because we were just going to go sit over there and have a glass of wine. he looked at me and he said, "Dude, you're in Beverly Hills, not Mazatlan." And so we figured out a way to open it on our own. We might have bought a corkscrew or something. I don't know.
Then I was manic because first of all, I rented like a minivan because I wanted to take us all sightseeing in Beverly Hills.
There were like 7 of us or 8 of us in there.
It was Chad, it was Steven, his wife, and anyway, so then we go to Beverly Hills and you guys are sitting on a patio while I'm on the phone with my company's insurance company, and you're screaming in the back like, "I can't believe you hit that woman," and stuff like that. I'm like, it was just beyond belief. And because there were so many people, I had to come up to you guys like 7 different times.
Right.
Like, what's your birth date? What's your birth date? What's your address?
Which is why we started chirping you. It was because it had been like the 5th time they had asked for my birth date.
Yeah, it was a fun day.
But then, if you remember right, when we decided, we drove out to Santa Monica, I think, to have dinner that night.
Yes.
And went out to some fish place.
Yep.
And we almost got in another car accident on the way out there.
I don't remember that. So anyway, that was fun. But the thing that was unbelievable is Margot texted me that you got into this car accident. All of a sudden, you like put out a group message for like fantasy sports. And then the next morning at 7 a.m., I wake up and you're already on the driving range. So clearly, there's just something about your brain that just does not have like a stress detector. Like, what is disconnected in your head that nothing ever bothers you? It just drives me crazy.
Well, there wasn't anything I could do about it. I mean, It wasn't like I could fix my door on the spot. Mm-hmm. And I had called the other woman's insurance company, and they put me on hold. So while I was on hold, I had the phone on speaker, and I just figured I'd send out the fantasy hockey updates.
You're unreal, man. And then same thing. Like your son is, I mean, his name is Anthony Jr. Your son's exactly like that. Margot just tells a story about her dropping him off at the airport last week. And there's so many different stories about AJ over the years of airport runs that are beyond belief. And as he gets to the airport, he's getting his stuff in the back, and he just goes to Margot and goes, "Oh, I forgot my computer." Like exactly like you would. And then he's just like, "I'll just get it next time." Go months without his laptop.
Well, I think he's home in 2 or 3 weeks. But at that moment, what could you do? You don't have time to drive home and get the computer. So
stress, like a normal human being, be stressed and upset and agitated that I forgot the computer.
I think I'm sure Margot reacted for him.
Yes,
so I'm sure he said, "Well, Mom's plenty stressed for both of us."
There's so many times that Margot will say something to me, and my reaction will be like, "Oh my God!" and she will be so excited that I had that reaction because, like, I just said this to Anthony, and he even react. You know, like,
I think that's why she calls you sometimes.
I know.
Can you believe what Ariana did? And I maybe didn't respond to the text.
Yeah. Oh man, unreal. All right.
Actually, we had a funny moment. We were in a golf tournament this weekend. That's why AJ was home, that and the fantasy hockey draft. And we were playing Saturday at Loggers Trail, and it was a long day, and bottom line is my phone died during the day. And so about halfway through the round, my phone's dead. We get done, and we're sitting in the clubhouse kind of tabulating the scores, and Ariana and AJ say, "We want to go out and play some more golf." And I said, "Well, before you do, just get a hold of Mom, because I think she was making dinner, so can you just at least check with her, confirm with timing, make sure she's okay with it? I don't really care. I'm done. I'm not, whatever. Our tournament part is done." And so they apparently tried to get a hold of her. I don't know what happened with that, but Mike Greenlay was in the tournament. He walks over and overheard part of it, and he says, "Wait, you guys have to call Margot because his phone's dead?" And he said, "Well, how is that surprising?"
Yeah.
So I lived this for 7 years on the road, where every time Margot wanted to get a hold of him, she's calling me, she's calling Russo, she's calling Chad, and so there was a little bit of a funny flashback moment to that.
There was a lot of times on the road where the phone would ring, and it's just Margot calling because she can't get you. The most infamous is the one in Carolina where she like called. She's like, "Are you with Anthony?" I'm like, "No, I haven't seen him all night." Your phone was dead while you're out. Had to use somebody else's Uber account to get home.
No, I had a bartender call me an Uber, and then I just gave him cash.
Anyway, all right. Let's talk about, before we get on the Wild, and we're gonna have a lot to talk about with the Wild. We got our bold predictions. We'll talk about some of the moves that just happened and things like that. I just want to go back and talk to you about this New Jersey Buffalo 2 games that would just happen in Prague, and all this hype going into the season with the Sabres. Dahlin brings them all in July to Switzerland, and they're going to be a different team, and they're finally, they got this young core that's now ready to prove that they could be winners. And then they have 2 really just blah games over there. I've never seen teams go 0-2 to start the season, but this 0-2 is made it manic in Buffalo. They got their home opener on Thursday, and if they lose that, it is going to be unbelievable.
Well, it's a team that a year ago was looked at as much the same as Detroit and Ottawa. The teams up on the rise in the East. One of these teams is going to take the next step. One of them is going to likely be a playoff team. And their season was disappointing, cost a head coach's job. And I think that's why this year the expectation level was different. We made the biggest move we can make, change the head coach. The old you can't trade the team, but they changed the head coach. So I think they thought there was going to be an immediate impact. And truth is, I think they just look the same as they did so often last year.
Yeah.
Where it's a team that every once in a while there will be a stretch of 10, 12, 16 minutes where they play at a really high pace and their skill comes to the front and you say, wow, this team is not that far away. And then all of a sudden you look and, well, they don't know where they're going in their own zone. They've given up a couple grade A chances. They're down a goal or two, and now they just coast to the finish. They didn't get great goaltending most of last year, and I just think those 2 games looked remarkably like what we saw from them for most of last year.
I don't know if they were in Europe too much, but, man, I've never seen panic after an 0-2 start like this, and if there was any team that couldn't afford it, it is them. And on the conversely, there was so much hype going into the season that the Devils had the best offseason around, and other than Nashville, and they got the goalie. I remember talking to Tom Fitzgerald at the GM's meetings in March about the importance of goaltending. He's like, trust me, it keeps me up at night every single night. And they go out and they get Jacob Markstrom, and they get 2 wins in a row there, and they look like they're going to be really good this year. They get Dougie Hamilton back.
They were just the opposite last year, where they had taken the big step the year before.
Right.
And then last year, their goaltending was lousy. They had some injury problems and never really found traction, where I think they might have been the most obvious team to pick for a rebound year, because it's largely the same club with the exception of their goaltender.
And Dougie.
That 2 years ago was one of the best teams in the NHL.
Yeah. And
now they've added – and last year they added Ryan Graves, kind of a sturdy, reliable defenseman. Now they add the offensive-minded guy to go with them. And, yeah, I think New Jersey is going to be one of the teams to beat in the East. We'll get to that a bit later in our prediction show, our prediction part of the show. And that's why if you just lost 2 games to New Jersey in January, nobody's in panic mode. But because they're games 1 and 2, they have a lot more light on them.
No doubt about it. Tonight, Seattle and or this afternoon, Seattle and St. Louis got started. Seattle was up 2-0. St. Louis was plodding, monotonous, just looked terrible. Seattle looked like they were going to just beat the crap out of them. Then they made it 3-0. It was immediately waved off because the guy was definitely a foot offside. Puck came out. It's actually waved off on the ice, didn't need a review. But during that, there was just a scrum that Yanni Gourde, just by their St. Louis bench, just started hitting everybody. And boom, St. Louis just took over from there.
Kyrou was 2 minutes.
Kyrou was unreal.
Minute 55 or something like that. It was so fast.
And Broberg, the guy that they got in the one of the 2 players that got in the offer sheet from Edmonton,
and Holloway was in the middle of it too. I think he had an assist on one of the 3 goals. But those 2 guys both look good in their St. Louis debuts.
Robert Thomas, 20 of 26 from the faceoff circle, so make sure he's in my starting lineup this week. And then right now, Florida's, last I looked, beating the crap out of Boston. We were joking before the show that if Swayman waited one more day, he might have got an extra $1 million per year. And obviously, Korpisalo won't be in net for a long time. But Florida put up the banner tonight, and looks like they haven't missed a beat since they won the Cup in June.
Yeah, I think they had the first 12 or 12 of the first 13 shots on goal in the game. They were all over Boston early. Boston's frustration.
Trent Frederick jumped Matthew Tkachuk in retaliation for him fighting Pasternak last year. Stupid, got the 1 penalty. And
And they were, I think isn't it 2 years in a row that Florida's beaten Boston in the playoffs? So
Yep.
because it was they came back to beat them 4-3
Yep.
in
And
the
then
first
last
round
year-
the other day, and then last year beat
And
them
I
in the
covered
second
that
round.
series, and then how cruel is it that they're in the visitors' locker room listening to the banner go
Right.
up?
And even
Hilarious.
as they're out getting pictures taken with the cup, Boston's on the ice taking their warm-up circles.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was a coincidence.
No,
that
not at all. And then the last game of the triple-header on ESPN is Utah versus Chicago. Be exciting to see how good Utah is. Obviously, Wild no, because Arizona played, wreaked havoc on them last year, which was odd because the Wild usually forever beat the Coyotes for fun. But Utah is an up-and-coming team. It'll be interesting if Ingram could be the player they add Sergachev and players like that. But I want to talk to you about the Hawks before we talk about the Wild. All right, exhibition is exhibition, but we basically saw their starting lineup, especially in Game 2 of those two games, and the Wild beat them 13-3 in 2 games, using most of their lineup, not all of it. Boldy wasn't in, Middleton wasn't in, but we saw their lineup. And the one thing that was so clear to me is that this team is still completely out to lunch defensively. Same system in their own end, clueless, and it just I just don't know how they're being coached. And we always talk about teardowns here, right? Because the Wild have never torn it down. And one thing we just talked about Buffalo. I mean, there's no guarantees on teardowns. Edmonton's still looking for their first cup after many first overall picks. And
many
here,
teardowns and every bit of luck possible.
And you're looking at, I think Detroit is going to be an up-and-coming team. I think Ottawa will. I think Buffalo's got a ton of talent, but none of these teams have won yet. And you look at Chicago, and if you have years of playing like this, you're just instituting a losing culture. But if you have a 19-year-old in Connor Bedard that's not being taught the importance of defense and how to play defense, that's a major problem. They got to figure that out there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because this year they made a concerted effort to go add some more proven NHL veteran type guys.
Right.
But
Tuvo and
Teravainen, and which I think all that's great. And I really thought coming into the season that they would be at least more competitive. They're far from a playoff team. But then after watching those 2 preseason games, they might be the worst team in the league again. I can't imagine San Jose is any worse than that. I don't know who else is even in the same conversation. But what stood out to me was the first night we played them in St. Paul, and I remember talking to the Chicago broadcasters afterward, and they're like, yeah, it was close to our lineup, but we were missing some key guys. And I kind of wrinkled up my face, and I was like, well, who's not here?
Yeah.
They said, well, Teravainen's not here. Donato's not here.
Taylor Hall wasn't, was he?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, he was.
But
okay.
Donato was the second guy they mentioned.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're playing without Ryan Donato, and you think that's a difference maker? I mean, I love the kid, but I said, well, the Wild are playing without Matt Boldy tonight. I mean, that's a little bit of a different story. And then when we went down and played there, I thought, okay, this will be a different deal because it's home fans.
Yeah.
Now it is their whole team. TJ Brody didn't play in St. Paul, but he was playing that night. And I walked
Donato
away saying
and Teravainen.
that Donato and Teravainen were in, and amazingly it wasn't the savior. But I just walked away saying, you can add all the veterans you want, but those guys know that they're not there for the future. They're just here to as a space filler until younger players are ready to take their job. Mm-hmm. And so I think they have a different investment level and a different commitment level. And I love Nick Foligno, and I think he's a tremendous guy, and I'm sure he's doing everything he can to try and coax out of the older guys, hey, you got to show up and compete. But you and I hung around Pat Maroon last season. This isn't a guy that's going to come and go nose to the grindstone when he's sitting on a last place club. That just is, it's not how he's wired. Now, you trade Pat Maroon to a team in a playoff race late, I think you might see the old Pat Maroon that was a part of Cup winners, that was a very valuable fourth line guy. But how committed is he going to be to doing everything the right way to show these guys how to be winners when he knows he's not going to be there if and when they ever win? Mm-hmm. I just don't think I'm not positive that it's the right recipe to try to show those guys. Yeah. It might be better to surround them with guys that are also a part of an up-and-coming thing where let's surround them with guys that are, we're going to take some lumps together, but we're going to figure this out together, as opposed to, I mean, you look over the last 2 years, all the different guys that have come. I mean, even Taylor Hall, he's not going to be here when the Blackhawks are competitive. He's going to be long gone by then.
Right.
And so you bring in a previous number 1 overall pick, you bring in a previous Hart Trophy winner, but he's not in the same mindset that he was when he was in Edmonton or New Jersey, where it was, I'm coming here and we're going to try to win this thing.
Yeah. I love Bedard. I love every time I interview him. I talked to him at the NHL Media Tour in Vegas. Talked to him last year during the Stanley Cup Final in Vegas. He's a great kid, incredible talent. He's going to be a great player. But somebody's got to teach him how to play D too. Like, he is not, like, you know, you can't just always try to get offense. And we saw even the play he made on the Faber goal. I mean, like Faber coming full speed is going to catch most D flat-footed, and clearly that guy slipped. But that play started with Bedard in the neutral zone, knocking down the puck and then not getting back. And you know, I just think that 19 years old, you can get a lot of bad habits by being in this situation. Like, you know, like sometimes it's just not the smartest thing to just throw them right into the NHL and never get an AHL game and all that type of stuff. Like, you got to get coached.
Well, and you have to play games that matter. You know? So how many times can you turn the puck over at the offensive blue line and it just doesn't matter because you're down 4-1 anyway?
Right.
And you know, it's like going to the driving range and you hit balls right, left. It doesn't matter. There's no consequence. And so you walk away remembering the 4 that you hit right down the middle. The ones that you sprayed all over don't matter. Then you get on the course. Now the ones that spray carry a consequence.
Right.
Well, for him, you show up, all these turnovers, they don't matter because you were going to lose the game anyway. Well, at some point you got to stop doing that because there is going to be a time where it does matter. And we talked about a little bit on our broadcast in Chicago that there is always going to be a little bit of a connection. Comparison's a strong word, but connection for sure between Faber and Bedard. And I think there's just a little extra in Faber's game every time he, you know, hey, look, I didn't score as many points as you. You won the Rookie of the Year, but I was a more complete player as a rookie than you were. Now, Bedard's going to be a superstar in this league. There's no question in my mind. But he's going to be a minus 30 for the next couple of years if he keeps playing the way he's playing. Minus 45 last year.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I think there's a little something in Bedard, too, where he kind of wants to show, like, I'm the best. Because, I mean, you saw that play in the first period where he decided to cut right into Faber, and he fell backwards like he hit a tackling dummy. Let's take a quick break, and I promise we'll talk about the Wild when we get back. Hey, it's Russo for Aquarius Home Services and Connecticut. Fall is here, football, cool, crisp air, and the perfect time to bundle up and save with Aquarius. Right now, save 25% when you bundle a Connecticut non-electric water softener with their K5 drinking water system. Get ready for spotless dishes, shiny fixtures, and pure, refreshing drinking water. I've had this system for years. I even had them out the other day to put in new filters. Everything is incredible when you have one of these Connecticut systems. Aquarius, your independent authorized Connecticut dealer, is here to take your water worries away. Schedule your free water analysis at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. Don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
Get $250 when you switch to a Royal Credit Union checking account. Switch to Royal's Smart Checking account and enjoy no monthly fees or minimum balance, free mobile check deposits, and surcharge-free access to over 40,000 ATMs nationwide. Getting your $250 is easy. Open your Royal Checking account by October 19, receive 2 payroll direct deposits, and you'll receive $250. See details and open your account today at rcu.org/checkingbonus. Insured by NCUA.
Back here, worst seats in the house. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. October 30th is our next live show at SplitRock, and this is the Aquarius Home Services studio. Thanks, as always, to Aquarius for sponsoring us, our longest sponsor on the show. Anthony, man, I'm excited. Thursday night, game 1 against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then it gets pedal to the metal, right? 3 games in 4 nights, 4 in the first 6. It's going to be a really exciting start to the year, and you know, cool news the other day where look, every rookie comes to camp and they got a goal, And the first goal is to, quote, make the team. Make the team just means in hockey being on the opening night roster. Doesn't mean they're going to be here a week from now. Doesn't mean they're going to be here 2 weeks from now. Doesn't mean that they're going to play Thursday night. In fact, I'm probably thinking that both Liam Ohgren and Jesper Wallstedt don't play on Thursday night. But man, both guys had really good camps. Ohgren started slow, got better as it went along, and I thought Wallstedt was awesome.
I think Wallstedt did everything that you hoped he was going to do coming into camp and has earned the right to play NHL games. Mm-hmm. Ohgren, I thought, I was a little concerned, especially after the game in Dallas, where I thought it was a big night for guys like he and Riley Heidt and a few others that Rossi I thought was lousy that night, but a few others that were coming into camp with an outside chance to open eyes. And I thought all of them were lousy that night. And from that point on, Ohgren was really good. And I think what's different for Ohgren than some of those other guys is that he could make the team and fill a role even if he doesn't end up in the top six. I think ultimately everybody hopes he's a top six player for long term in his career. I think to me, he looks like he's like a middle six type guy, a second or third line guy.
Yeah, I think long term he probably is.
Right. But the difference is he can be productive in those spots.
Yes.
You could throw him on a line with Ryan Hartman and Marcus Foligno and have a nice third line. You could throw him on a fourth line in place of Freddie Gaudreau or Jakob Lauko or something like that if one of those guys isn't going. And he can still be a productive player. He for sure has to play, otherwise there's no sense keeping him with the big league club instead of in the American League. But I think it's great to let him start the season, work him into the lineup. I think Hines has hinted at the fact that the guys who play Thursday night aren't guaranteed to be all the guys playing Saturday night and for sure Saturday and Sunday, where why not? Even if guys, let's even say you win a couple games. Yeah. What would be the harm in saying to Lauko or Gaudreau or somebody that, hey, on Sunday night, second of back-to-backs, we have one extra forward with us. We're going to throw in some fresh legs for that second game. And it doesn't mean you're not going to be back in there when we go to St. Louis, but for this game, we want to give this guy a shot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think, he is one guy, like the old adage in hockey is you don't want a kid like this playing, you want him getting first line minutes, first power play in Iowa, not being in the press box or fourth line. I think he's a very different story. I think being here will be beneficial for him. Again, he's going to get time in Iowa this year. There's no doubt in my mind. But what I like about this season as opposed to last season is last season they came out of camp and they basically had 21 guys on the roster. And the 21st guy didn't scare anybody. Okay. This year it's quite different. In other words, what I'm saying, without being totally disrespectful, is nobody was worried that Kalen Addison was in the press box last year. You're like, oh my God, I got it. Now you have opening night. You're going to have Declan Chisholm in the press box. All those D know that Declan can play. You have Liam Ohgren in the press box. Don't think for a second that Freddie Gaudreau and Marcus Johansson, all these guys don't know that kid, the first-round pick, is behind them. And then you have Jesper Wallstedt, who both goalies know they want to get games this year, that they just signed to a 2-year, $2.2 million a year extension on the day that he made the team. And so now all of a sudden there is that internal pressure to perform or you could be out of the lineup, where last year everybody knew the cap situation, everybody knew the roster situation. There was nothing to push these guys.
Yeah, and the guys that were in Iowa last year were all guys that everybody knew what they were.
Right.
They were, when they came up to the NHL, they weren't going to scare anybody. They were. Now you have a few guys down there that are. There are some guys down there that have had some success in the NHL. And then guys like Damon Hunt who are still on the way up. But Travis Boyd's a proven NHL player. Right. And, the same with guys like Reese Johnson and Jones. I mean, these guys, they're not going to come up here and be the new integral part of your franchise forever. But if you're a third or fourth line guy and this guy down there is going down and you go down or you go into a slump, these guys can come up and play. But without a doubt, there's a difference with the internal competition provided by, I think the top three is what you're talking about. Hunt on defense, Ohgren at forward, Wallstedt goaltender. To have one of those guys on the doorstep that are a future part of the future of your organization. I think it absolutely will help this club. And we've been talking about it all summer that even though there weren't major changes, this is a deeper club, a much deeper club than last year, with subtle changes made to add to that depth.
Obviously, what do you make of the Wallstedt extension? I mean, he basically got the Oscarov deal, and both of them have played 3 NHL games. He gets a one-way. What it's telling all of us is that they want to get him games this year and that he is going to be a full-time NHL player starting next year. But what I loved about the Wild doing this now, and it was totally unexpected to me, just based on the fact that, a lot of times I pride myself on having sort of instincts on when a move would be made, and this never really occurred to me to even start checking if they were having conversations with Wallstedt. But the one thing that I think that they were a little worried about is offer sheets. There's so many teams in this league, knowing that the Wild are going to throw the bag at Kaprizov next year, that know that this team still, and they got Rossi to deal with as well, that this team still has cap complications. And if you're a team that thinks that, holy crap, he is an elite goalie and he could be our number one, you could have somebody go out and throw him some crazy offer sheet the Wild would have problems matching. And so you get it done now and you stop all that temptation.
And let's just say that for the next 2 years, it's Gus and Wallstedt.
Pretty good.
At a combined total of just over $5 million. You can win with that.
Yeah.
And that's great bang for the buck in terms of cap space. So I like that. I like it. And I think it tells you that they wanted to wait to see what Wallstedt looked like in camp.
Yep.
And in preseason, and he passed all those tests. So good for him. And
the way it's going to work is Wallstedt's going to actually live in Minnesota. He already has an apartment with his girlfriend in downtown Minneapolis, and then whenever he goes to Iowa, he'll be staying in a hotel. I've been kind of alluding to that the last couple shows. Right now, Ohgren is in the hotel, so Ogren's not stupid too. He knows that he hasn't gotten the get a place yet, so he knows that his situation's a little more fluid. The one thing I love about Wallstedt is his cojones. So we're interviewing him in the locker room yesterday, right next to Flower, who is in his stall. And he is on the record telling us, my goal is to play games and win games and make it that I'm not the guy being sent down and things like that. And he's just saying this right next to Flower, right next to him. I just think that says everything about his mentality, and you need a goalie that confident. And he is super excited to be at a stall next to Fleury and learning from this guy. And he is always quick to be respectful about Philip Gustafson and how well Philip Gustafson treats him as well. He's his golfing buddy. They actually 2 days ago on the Sunday off day, they golfed together alone. And so, that's to your point that you just made, Anthony, just having 2 Swedish countrymen that could be the future in goal for the Wild. That's not a bad thing. And the fact that Gus is treating him respectfully, even though that he knows that this guy is here to take his job for a long time, says everything about Gus being professional as well. What do you make of John Merrill getting the opening night draw into the lineup and Declan Chisholm out?
Well, I think there were 2 things in play there. One is Jared Spurgeon looks great. So I think they feel comfortable having Spurge run the second power play. And if Spurgeon was at all, if there were any doubts in their mind about whether or not Spurgeon was at 100%, you'd want Chisholm to run that second power play. And then the one thing that Merrill brings is that he's an adequate penalty kill defenseman, and I don't think they feel comfortable with Chisholm yet in those spots. And so this is a way to say, look, one of the points of emphasis for us this year was penalty kill. This guy's a better guy on the kill, so we're going to give him the nod on night one. And it's kind of like so many of the other spots where, unless the young guy blew you away in camp, let the veteran guy have the first crack to go out and prove that he's capable, that he's formidable. Now, if Merrill goes in and plays and is really good, let him keep playing.
Right.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
But
he knows right over his shoulder the first couple times. I mean, now maybe if he has 10 good games, he earns a little bit more rope. Or if he has an off night, now he might get another shot. But if he's mediocre games 1 and 2, now you've earned the trust of that veteran because you had the first shot. You weren't very good these 2 games. We're going to throw Chisholm in there.
Yep.
Maybe it's the second of back-to-backs in Winnipeg, and now Chisholm's hungry because he wants to stay in the lineup.
Yep.
So that goes back to that internal competition where guys are well aware of who's waiting in the wings, but at the same time, you keep the veterans on your side just by giving them the first crack.
Well, and like that it's a good point that you make because when I wrote that that Ohgren wasn't playing, a lot of the comments were like, well, he should be in over Johansson and Gaudreau. And to your point, what you just said is that, like, Johansson, his last 2 exhibition games was outstanding. And the one thing that John Hines and the coaching staff clearly talked to him about was being more hard on the puck, engaged, physical. And he did both in those last 2 preseason games, Chicago. Now you take him out of lineup and he's got to be like, well, now you lose him. Gaudreau, the same thing. Gaudreau came in. He is clear-minded. He's healthy. He's trying to bounce back from a really tough last year. He's already in a position where he's on the 4th line, so he's already a little worried already. But he had a very good camp, and that 4th line with Lauko and Huznadinov has been great. So now you just take him out for no reason and you lose him mentally. So right. I agree with you. I think it's let it play out, slow play this. The Chisholm Ohgren things, the Chisholm Merrill thing still surprised me, but to your point, it's definitely because of the penalty kill. And the other reason is that you can't on this team, in my eyes, have 2 defensemen on your point on the second unit, because then there's a forward that should be on the power play that's not. Now, people might be like, well, Freddie Gaudreau doesn't need to be on the power play. But the reality is that you want Freddie on that flank, and you want Spurge up top. And so, now you have Rossi, Hartman, Johansson, and Gaudreau on the up front on the first power play, on the second power play unit. And I just think that because Spurgeon has looked so good and because he is a mainstay on a power play, I think it's put Declan in a position where he had to be really reliable at 5-on-5. And I just think his last couple exhibition games, after an incredible one, I thought, in Winnipeg to open the preseason, I think he did some alarming things at 5-on-5, and the last memory of the preseason from John Hines' perspective is probably that turnover, that, again, a cross-ice turnover that he had multiple times the last couple games that went on to Bedard's stick, and it turned out to be a scoring chance. So I just think that because he's not going to be on the power play and because they feel like they need to rely on him more than he's shown at 5-on-5, I think this is probably a little message to him to shape up, and you'll be in the game probably against Seattle or Winnipeg.
Well, and I think the message is that you haven't, as much as we like you, you still have a lot to prove in the National Hockey League. And I think the same, you touched on the forwards quickly, is why not throw the veteran guys out there first? Mm-hmm. But they both know that the leash is short because you've got a guy capable of filling in the top 6, but also capable of playing a 4th line role. And so it's a little bit different than if you had I can't think of an example. Like, let's say Matt Boldy, for example, was coming up. Matt Boldy doesn't seem to fit on a 4th line. So if Boldy's not going to be in your top 6, you probably don't even want him in the NHL. You'd rather have him in the American League, where Ohgren, I think, is a little bit different skill set. And Johansson did what you asked of him late in the preseason, so you get the first shot. Yeah. But if it's 6 games or 4 games where you're invisible, well, we got a guy up here who we want to take a look at and give him a shot. And then Ohgren better produce, because if he's invisible too, then obviously you go back to the veteran guy. But I don't know what the ceiling is for Liam Ohgren. It's really early in his career to see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because look, both you and I knew that there was something in Eck, but we didn't know that he was going to be this offensive because of the amount of times that we always joke that the degree of difficulty had to be almost 0 for him to put the puck in the net because of the amount of. But Ohgren, he's 20 years old, so we are not going to know for some time.
Absolutely not. But there's like, you look at Matt Boldy. I look at a guy who he could score 40 in the NHL and probably be like a 40-40 type guy. You know, you look at Marco Rossi. I think I could see him being a 25 and 45 kind of guy. I don't know yet what with Ohgren. I mean, maybe like a 25-25 type player, maybe 30 and 30. I don't know. I don't think you know exactly what it is yet. And it's hard to, I don't want to say like, well, he's never going to be more than this, but he brings some other things. He's a straight line guy that has he could be a physical guy. That's why I think he could help you. Maybe he's a Marcus Foligno with more skill, or maybe he's a Matt Boldy with a little less skill. I mean, he could be somewhere in between there.
I'm going to talk to you a lot about this on the next podcast, but Joe Smith and I have a story that's running what we call A1 in The Athletic tomorrow, which means it'll be on everybody that subscribes to the Athletics app, on the Minnesota Wild and the fact that they haven't been serious contenders and what they're trying to do to become serious contenders. And Craig Leopold talked to Joe and I exclusively for this story, and he discussed a 5-year plan that they have. They're actually in year 2 of this plan to essentially what they're hoping is in year 5 of this plan, so 4 years from now, deliver a cup to Minnesota. But the one thing that Craig says in this story is as part of this plan, it is imperative that after this year that they know what they have in some of these young guys that they've got to play. And so that's why I think we're seeing a lot of Wallstedt. We're seeing Ohgren. We're going to see Hunt at some point this year.
But even then, like, you want to see him play, you're still not going to know what you have.
Right.
I don't believe by the end of this year. Look at Marco Rossi as example number one. Is he played 2 years ago. We had no idea what you had going into last year. I think you have a little bit more idea, but I still don't think at this point you know exactly what you have. I think you have a lot more reason for optimism after last season than the season before. I still don't think you know for sure what you have in him. I think you know what you have in Brock Faber, but I don't think you know what you have yet in Marco Rossi. Or
I'm really bullish right now on Faber. I think this guy is going to be an absolute superstar defenseman. I do
too.
Like, he is.
I think he's going to be a superstar,
special.
But I don't know that he's going to be as obvious a superstar as.
See, I just think he is, because right now he's using his speed to create offense, and that's how you're.
But to me, when I say superstar, I mean I'm thinking about the Roman Josi, like those kind of defensemen.
See, I think this guy is going to be in Norris conversations a lot in his career.
Maybe, but I think in order to be, I think the award is flawed, but not the award, the selection for the award is flawed.
Right.
Where there's always going to be the defenseman. Like the fact that Erik Karlsson won it, nobody would want him on the ice against the other team's best.
He doesn't play the penalty kill.
Right, and yet he's the best defenseman in the league.
Totally agree with you.
And so he was the best offensive defenseman. You know, Burns is a guy like that, where, I mean, he's a little bit better defensively, but still like haywire.
Nobody's saying that professional hockey writers are smart.
No, but I just think if you want to have... To say that he's going to be in the Norris conversation, I think he might be in the conversation of being in the top, among the top 10 defensemen in the NHL. But I don't know that he'll ever, like, he's never going to be an 80-point guy, which a lot of those are the guys that wind up in the Norris conversation. You look at Adam Fox, you look at Roman Josi, you look at even Josh Morrissey. I mean, these guys that are 15 goals and 60 assist guys. And I don't know that Faber's ever going to be that.
See,
but he might be.
There,
but I don't know. I think he's going to be a little bit less than that offensively, but yet a guy, he's going to be like Jonas Brodin with some offense.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think, like, let's put it this way. He had 47 points last year, and he got on the power play at all, starting basically in December.
Year,
You know, like just imagine if he was on the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess when you think about it that way, and you say 40, now you get to 60 points, but
the Wild's power play is so good.
He was also playing a ton of minutes because Spurgeon was hurt. Brodin, he probably won't play quite as many minutes. That'll hurt a little bit in terms of your scoring. But yeah, I suppose if you say 47 last year, and certainly room for improvement where maybe he gets to mid-50s.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about Rossi getting the #1 job, at least Char Camp, and then we're going to go through our bold predictions. We'll be right back.
We do want to thank Twill and the Edina Galleria. I don't know if you've been to the Edina Galleria. It's a beautiful place to shop, a very comfortable place to shop, easy parking, easy in and out. really good restaurants there to hang out in if you want to do that. But if you walk by Twill, you'll see that the shop reflects their products. It's a very down-to-earth, easygoing, attractive space with expert associates working there who are not pushy at all. They're just there to answer your questions and help steer you in the right direction if you need steering. And you go in there and just walk by, get a look, and then go back when you want to buy clothes for yourself, when you buy somebody a present, whatever the case might be. Go in and realize that Scott Dayton handpicks everything in his shop. Scott Dayton's the proprietor. It is Twill by Scott Dayton. Scott's been a friend of mine and has been supporting this network for a long time. I buy all of my clothes there. My wife loves the place. Every time we go in there, we buy more than we expected to buy because my wife likes it so much. Their stuff fits. It wears well. I just went on a European vacation where everything I wore was from Twill because you get out of an 8-hour flight and you're not even wrinkled. The stuff just wears well. You can buy everything from golf, from running shoes, walking shoes, golf shorts to beautiful Italian suits that you can wear anywhere, to any occasion. So just check out twillmn.com, sign up for their email notifications. They will not spam you. They'll just send you something if they're going to have a special event.
Back here, worst seats in the house, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. We are October 30th at SplitRock. This is our next live show. Can't wait for that. And definitely come on out. You could, we were just talking about Brock Faber, and we have the autographed jersey. I think it's an autographed jersey, or is it just a jersey?
I think it had an autograph on it.
Anyway,
it was hanging on the table in front of me the other night. I think I saw an autograph.
I didn't really look at it, but again, if the more shows you come to, you could.
I was too busy
register
stressing
to win
out
that.
About other things.
Yep, and then you can register to win that. But if you come to every show that we have before we do the drawing, you're going to have multiple raffle tickets, so to speak, in there. Before we get to our bold predictions, I do want to talk to you about Rossi. So they started camp with Hartman. Then they put Rossi there. Rossi played the second half of the second exhibition, the second half of the second to last exhibition game. He was on that line, then practiced with them all week. Started there in Chicago. Eck got some looks in the third period, which we know that Eriksson Ek is going to get shifts with them this year because especially late in games, you're going to want him taking offensive zone draws between Zuccarello or Boldy and Kaprizov and all that. But Rossi clearly has won that number one job right now. And, to your point on last week's podcast, the second they moved Rossi to that line in that second Chicago game, he just got scoring chance after scoring chance. And if he could make this work where he plays with Zuccarello and Kaprizov all year, this could be a big breakout year for Marco Rossi, which is, after seeing Wallstedt get the extension and Faber get the extension, don't think for one bit that Marco Rossi's not thinking like, how come you haven't called my agent? And they haven't. And I think that he knows that he needs to prove himself this year if he wants to get that long-term deal.
Yeah, I think to me, he doesn't seem like a guy that's his number one motivation. Mm-hmm. To me, he just wants to be a hockey player and believes he can be a great hockey player. And all of that other stuff, I get the sense when I listen to him and talk to him that contract isn't really at the first. I'm not saying it's not a factor.
Yeah.
But I just don't think for him that I think he's looking at it more like, I want to prove that I am a superstar NHL player. And the last 2 summers, I think, tell you everything you need to know about how committed this guy is to it. And as we've talked throughout the summer and throughout early part of training camp, I've believed that this is a better hockey team if Marco Rossi can take that job, win that job, and hold that job, because I think it makes the rest of the lineup make more sense. I think if you have Joel Eriksson Ek and Ryan Hartman as your 2 and 3 centers, you got something. And really, I should throw Murat Husnudinov in there too and say, if those are your 2, 3, 4, that now you've got down the middle, you look like a team that could be a handful. Yeah. And I think Eriksson Ek and Hartman both bring a little bit more grit, where if they're playing on a line, either one of them with Foligno and somebody else, now all of a sudden you have the potential of a real good shutdown line there that, as responsible as Marco Rossi is as a player, you never think of him as like, I want a hard match of him against the other team's best. I'm okay if he's on the ice against them, but now let's say you're facing Connor McDavid. Now you can do a hard match with Joel Eriksson Ek or, even if you wanted to play Hartman with, again, I don't think you would with speed-wise, but you play Eriksson Ek and for that night, you throw him on a line that's a shutdown line. Now, I just think the team makes more sense if Rossi can hold that job, and I don't see any reason why he can't. He got stronger, he got faster, and his skill set is elite.
Yeah. I just turned around, looked at your TV, and it's pretty cool seeing Andre Tierney actually in a home building in an actual NHL arena, not a college rink. Yeah, I agree with you. One thing you mentioned, Hosendinov, and then we're going to get to our bold picks here. Don't think Ryan Hartman's not worried about him. Hosendinov is somebody like John Hines has been gushing about him lately. Like, he really thinks this guy has a higher ceiling than fourth line center.
Well, I think he does too. I don't think he has a top six role.
But I'm just saying that, Hartman's got to play and be responsible defensively and all that stuff. Or, we could see those shifts where if you want more speed on that third line, you're going to throw a Hosendinov on there. Right. Before we get to the bold predictions, I want to just ask you about Columbus coming to town. We've talked about Dean Evison. I'm doing a huge story on Dean for Thursday. I talked to him for a half hour the other day. I talked to Don Waddell today, their GM, and some really incredible anecdotes from Dean that are going to be in this story. One big part of the story is the one player he actually developed a relationship with there in Columbus was Johnny Gaudreau. It's the only player Dean actually got on a plane and flew to visit before training camp and sat with him for 2 hours. And so, there's no roadmap to coaching this situation. And so there's a lot of really cool anecdotes in there. And then he talks a lot about his return to here to Minnesota. But what was really interesting is Don Waddell was very open in the fact that guys like Boone Jenner and Johnny Gaudreau made it very clear to them that they needed a coach that would push that locker room, especially the younger guys, and that's why they really fell in love with Dean. And so this will be a really cool story that'll run. And Dean's going to be looking around that arena and wanting to win that game
without a doubt. His comments were what every coach thinks, even though no coach is willing to say it. And tremendous guy, a lot of respect for him. He was great here, and I wish him the best in Columbus. I think he'll be great for them. It's just when you start to look at their lineup, it's amazing. Obviously you take away the best player, and now all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of guys
and their captain, like Boone Jenner. He loves them, and let's just tell you, when I did this interview with Dean last week, he was just going on and on about Boone, and then right after in practice they lose him, and it sounds like a major long-term injury. And so that now you take that out,
right,
and they're grabbing guys like Aston Reese off the scrap heap and Kevin LeBanc, and they had to get JVR, and it just and then you have a bunch of really quality young kids, the Moroshenko kid and Johnston and obviously Cole Sillinger and Fantilli, but they got a ways to go.
It's going to be, I think it might be a long year for them, and it's too bad because at the end of last year I would have said this is a team to watch to taking the next step in the East. And now I think he'll have them playing hard.
Yeah.
You better, and they've always been a team that has played
especially hard. Especially against Minnesota.
Right. But I think they might be in for a little bit of a long year in Columbus, and
they're going to have a lot to play for opening night. The Wild better be ready because there's going to be some motivation there. When you have Sean Monahan's going to be pretty inspired that game. This guy signed long term in Columbus to raise his kids with Johnny Gaudreau's kids, so really tragic situation. All right, let's go to the bold predictions, Anthony, and you explain.
So Vinny he said, this year I want you guys to make your picks, and I'm going to devise a point system, so we're going to see who was better at the end of the season. So I said, all right, Vinny, you come up with a system, and we'll make our picks. Vinny wanted to participate, so he sent his picks.
Okay.
So we'll compare the three of us. And the gist of it is that we're going to pick our top three in each division in order.
Okay.
And then the two wild card teams in each conference.
Oh, okay, the two wild card.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And then we'll have the system. We don't need to get into the details of the scoring system, but bottom line is that if you pick teams in the right spot, you're going to score points, bonus points if you get them in the exact right spot. And then he has 4 wild players that he said, I think Utah just scored their first goal less than 5 minutes in.
Who was it? Tell me it was Sean Dursey.
I don't think so. It might have been McCann. I didn't see it for sure. Oh,
McCann's on Seattle, right? Tell me, is it Gunther?
It was
He's on my
Gunther, yeah. That's
Do
all
I
right.
have to text Alex to tell him to bleep that out?
Yep,
I just said to I just
You did
I
say
just
it tonight,
said to
yeah.
Anthony before the show that I almost called up Dylan Gunther because I think he's going to just have a monster year, and I didn't do it, and he is now in my minors, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to get him up for next week. What pisses me off is I'm playing my arch rivals in this league.
Yep. And
Who, by the way, that's a stupid rule that you have, that we start the league after the games start, and then they could just take draft Brendan Dillon and put him in the lineup. Who drafts Brendan Dillon in a fantasy league? And they put him in the lineup just to get 9 PIMs.
But you knew the same rule.
I knew the same rule, but they are the snakes that would do that would even think of something like that.
Our hands were tied.
How about,
this is
this is the second year in a row. How about once we do it like every normal draft and have a fantasy draft before the season starts?
Well, it was partially due to the fact that we have a big chunk of our league covers other sports. So some guys cover the Twins, so we usually wait till the Twins season's over. We have a guy who covers the Patriots, so we try to avoid his schedule. And so we always try to have the draft the Sunday night before the regular part of the season starts. And everybody wants to wait as far as they can in camp to have an idea of like who's going to make the teams, who gets all the injuries, all that kind of stuff. So there is a reason for it. It's not ideal. It's the second year in a row we've had a couple of games in Europe.
If there was anybody that was going to pick up Brendan Dillon, it would be these two.
Well, didn't they do it to you last year too?
Yeah, they did it to me last year.
Was it Niederreiter that scored twice early, I think, or something?
Yeah. So I log on our little system today, and I'm like, how the hell am I down 8-0 already? The league hasn't started. And I'm like, oh, I'm down 11-0 in PIMS because of Brendan freaking Dillon.
Well, and they said it on draft night that they were going to pick him and start him against you, which they did. Well, although I will say, you kind of poked the bear right away because they also had Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, if I remember right, and you made sure to point out that they had him in their starting lineup as he got
Bob
beat.
Gave up 4 goals. Darn it.
Yeah, that game got a little close late. But so anyway, our predictions are going to be we're going to pick the top 3 in each division and the 2 wild cards, and then 4 wild players that Vinny selected because he said these are the 4 that I think there's some question as to what they might do this year, and there's a high importance level for the team's success. Boldy, Rossi, Hartman, Faber, point totals for the season.
Okay. First of all, when Wild fans that are listening to this podcast hear this, they're not even going to believe how actually optimistic I am about this season. And when they read my bold predictions column it's going to come out
I should send them the Scribes fantasy roster because you have more Wild players in your system than any team in our league, and it's the second year in a row that's been the case.
It's because they have a great prospect pool.
We have 40 players. You can have up to 40 players under your control in our league, and last year you had 10 that were a part of the Wild organization.
I think I dumped about half.
But I think you have 8 or 9 again now.
Well, I have Ohgren in my minors, I have Huznadinov in my minors.
And Haight.
And
Chisholm.
Really?
Yes, you picked Declan Chisholm at the end.
Yeah, I did that before I heard that he was not playing for John Merrill. And then
you have Marco Rossi.
I have Boldy, Rossi, and Faber.
And you had Hartman until right before the draft, traded him.
Yeah.
So it's like the Wild, whatever you'd call it,
if Craig Hartman's
Eastern
listening
Suburbs
to
or
this podcast,
something.
I'm sorry for trading your son.
All right. So anyway, let's get to our picks. Well, let's start in the Pacific Division. I'll give you Vinny's picks. He went Edmonton, Vegas, Vancouver. Who do you have as your top 3?
I have Vancouver, Edmonton, Vegas.
All right. I'm going Edmonton, Vancouver, and L.A.
Okay.
All right. How about in the Central Division?
I'm not confident about that. I'm not
Let's do the Central last. We'll go to the Metro. So it's the interesting one there is you guys both have Vegas in the top 3. I have L.A. And you took Vancouver to win the division.
Yeah, I love this Shilovs kid. And so I don't think the Demko thing's going to hurt them as much. And I think they've improved their blue line. I love Rick Tocchet as a coach.
I do too.
Yeah.
I thought last year they win that series if Demko's playing. Yeah. But you like Shilovs, huh?
And the other thing is, see, and if you actually look at the numbers, Shilovs kind of out goaltended Nashville. Like Saros didn't have a great, but I think Quinn Hughes, I don't know, like talking to Quinn Hughes at the NHL Media Tour, he just sold me on the Canucks this year. Like,
I like the Canucks.
yeah. And Edmonton always has those. First of all, Edmonton didn't have a good preseason. Like legit did not look themselves. Like they had a little bit of a hangover from being in the Stanley Cup final. Like they're big guys.
And they're still Edmonton.
And that they always have that part of the year where they just cannot,
And then they put the pedal to the metal and
then
go 18-0-2 or something.
Yeah. So Metro.
All right, let's go Metro. Vinny's got Rangers, Carolina, New Jersey.
I got New Jersey, Rangers, Carolina.
I've got Rangers, New Jersey, Carolina. So we all have the same three teams, but none of us have them in the same order.
Okay. You're writing this down?
Yep.
Okay.
Atlantic. Vinny's got Florida, Toronto, Buffalo.
Wow. I got Florida, Toronto, Tampa Bay.
I've got Florida, Boston, Toronto.
Okay.
So I'm the only one with Boston.
You know who I actually like this year, but I say it every year, is Ottawa. Like
Yeah.
I just think
I thought last year was the year.
like I think Allmark changes everything there.
He might, but I still just think somehow, some way they'll get in their own
Ottawa.
way and become Ottawa. All right, we'll go to the Central. What's your pick for the Central?
All right, Wild fans, you're going to be shocked at this. I got Dallas, Nashville, Minnesota.
All right, I have Dallas, Nashville, Colorado. Vinny has Dallas, Colorado, Minnesota.
I just think Colorado's taken a step back this year.
I think they are too. I have them third, but
And I think Winnipeg's taken a step back this year.
I agree with that. All right, so how about the two wild cards in the East?
All right, so that one I have to get back to you on, but in the West, let me start.
Okay, let's start with the West.
So I think that this year, I genuinely think that there are 5 teams coming out of the Central. I just don't like the Pacific Division. The one that I'm wavering on is LA, because LA just seems to be doing that youth movement where they're playing the Byfields and the Brant Clarks and all those guys. But Byfield looks like he's going to have an unbelievable year. But I'm going to go with Utah and Colorado as my wild card teams.
All right, I'm going Minnesota and Vegas. And so that means basically I've got LA in the playoffs where you have Utah. Vinny's going Winnipeg and Utah, so he doesn't have Nashville in the playoffs.
Wow.
Which is that's a bold prediction.
Yeah, that is a bold prediction.
Because I think Nashville had a good offseason.
If Nashville is not in the playoffs, Andrew Burnett's going to be like back living in Lake Elmo by the end of the season.
He probably will. But what I think is interesting I don't think there's a big gap in the Central between. I think Dallas is different, and then I agree with you. I think Colorado is slipping back toward the pack.
Depth, man.
Right. I think Nashville
Nichushkin is apparently going to come back at some point.
Isn't he 40 games he's out, though?
No, he wasn't suspended. He's just in the program. He's going to be back with them in November. He's not suspended.
I don't think suspended, but I thought they were talking about late December before he'd be back.
I saw a quote that Chris McFarland said today that he was going to be back joining the team around November, like at least to practice.
So, but I still think they'll take a step back. I think Nashville got better, but I don't think I'm not quite as all in on their moves as everybody else. So I just think when you look at teams like starting with Colorado, probably through Nashville, Minnesota, Winnipeg, I think all of those teams, I could see any one of them finishing second. I could see any one of them finishing fifth. And I went 4-4 because I think LA is going to be a little bit better than I have them, probably a little higher than you do in my mind.
Stanley Cup champion goalie in that.
Well, that's
Humps.
true. Yep, that's true. All right, wild cards in the East.
All right, I'm going to go Ottawa.
All right.
And I'm going to go Washington.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, I have Tampa and Detroit. Vinny has Boston and Detroit. So we're in the same area. So who's he not having the playoffs that he doesn't have Tampa in the playoffs? And you and I both do.
All right, I'm changing. Can I change? Because I just realized am I basically saying that Boston's not making the playoffs?
Yeah, you have Boston out.
Yeah, all right, we're going to change that. We're going to go Boston and Ottawa.
So
I'm going with
the wow prediction you
Atlantic.
made when I said wow to Washington, then you changed your mind. So now I have no more wows with your picks.
Yeah, I actually like Washington. There are a lot of people that don't like Washington.
I think Washington will be competitive, but I like Tampa's still Tampa, and they're still going to find a way, I think. And I think Detroit I like where they're headed right now.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, Tampa, because, it's just obviously you got the Stamkos factor leaving. Gensel comes in there.
Gensel comes in.
Yeah.
I just think
I love J.J. Moser.
I love Ryan McDonough coming
back.
I think they're just kind of going to subtly be Tampa.
Yeah. And Julian Breezewald, he's just a very, very intelligent GM. Like, I'm doing this project with Chris Johnston and a couple others at The Athletic right now, and about front offices. And the respect level from his brethren for Julian Breezewald is pretty off the charts.
All right, now the 4 Wild players.
Okay.
We're picking points.
Oh, yeah, we haven't done that yet.
We're just going to go with whoever's the closest. So you have your point totals written down?
Yep.
All right, so we'll start with Matt Boldy. Vinny's going 93.
Okay, I got 83.
I have 84.
Wow.
So we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
Marco Rossi. Vinny's got 59. I have 62.
I have 61.
All right, so we're in the
crazy.
same ballpark there.
Yeah.
You're probably unlikely to be the closest.
Yeah.
Since it would have to hit 61 for you to be the close. But
yeah,
I suppose
60
you could split with Vinny.
Yeah.
All right. Ryan Hartman, he's got 55. I have 56.
I have 65.
All right. Well,
no, sorry. I thought you said Faber. I got Faber 65.
Okay.
So what do you have for Hartman?
56.
Okay. Craig Hartman, mute this.
Yep.
I got 46.
All right. And the third one is Brock Faber. Vinny has 50. I have 44.
And I have 65.
You have 65.
So the reason why Hartman is just the line he's on, I just don't think it's going to be very offensive. Like, Trennan did not show me much offensively.
No, he didn't. But I think Hartman's going to find his way to 25 to 28 goals. Mm-hmm. He just is. He'll somehow, some way, he'll.
But who's he assisting pucks to? That's the thing. Like,
Right.
That's where I think he's a 20 goal scorer again. I just don't see him. And the one thing that you and I have talked about 1,000 times, and I think we've mentioned a couple times on the show, is that their number one power play either scores or they're on the ice for a minute 50. So I just don't think he's going to get a lot of power play time if Eck is healthy, because obviously, I shouldn't say Eck. I think if anybody on that first unit gets hurt, that's a forward. Probably he's the first option to move up, but I don't think he's going to get a lot of number one power play time. And so, where last year he got a lot more.
He did, yeah. I just think somehow, some way, he ends up scoring 28 goals.
Yeah,
and it might be that he gets some time between Kaprizov and Zuccarello.
Mm-hmm.
Might be that it's he gets some time playing on where the lines get juggled a little bit. I just think he's a guy that even in a third or fourth line role finds a way to score.
Right.
Whether he gets a couple shifts where he's taking a face off because it's on the right dot or whatever it is, I think he's going to find a way on the score sheet, even in a lesser role.
All right. Good show. Again, we'll be doing a podcast, Anthony and myself, when we get back from the first 2 games of the 7-game road trip. We're actually in town a couple days next week where the Wild come back and practice. They actually have an outdoor practice over in Roseville St. Louis Park on Thursday. Look at Wild social media to get all the details for that. So we'll do a podcast. I'm saying this again because Anthony needs to write this in his calendar, Margo. Next Wednesday
I was
or
in
Thursday.
charge of writing down the picks.
Yeah. But next week we'll have a lot to talk about because we'll be 4 games into the season. And then October 30th is our next live show. That's up at SplitRock, so definitely come on out for that. You can register to win that Brock Faber jersey. Thanks to our incredible sponsors and for joining us in the Aquarius Home Services studio. Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Royal Credit Union, and Twill in the Edina Galleria. Talk to you next week, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world